Many of them didn't come back. They aged out, or they found other things to do with their time, or they decided they were just going to stay home on Friday night. In fact, now I don't even look at data from pre-pandemic. It doesn't matter. 2017, 18, it doesn't matter. In some ways, though, Angela, we've gone back to our original roots, and on some levels, we're closer to our founding artistic director vision than where it morphed into over the 30 plus years, right? Which is contemporary theater. I'm always a big believer in you should touch your history from time to time, but you don't have to live there, right? You got to understand where you came from, but you can't live there. Times are so different now. So I'm an optimist, and so I keep thinking we're so close. We're on the precipice of, right, the next big thing, and turning the corner on ticket sales and all those things, right?
So great segue in talking about, I love that, always recognizing your history, but you don't have to live there. So can you talk a little bit about your experience at the Ohio Arts Council in 2000, and what you were seeing then? And again, it's kind of like the arts funding has been frozen in time as everybody else, all other industries seem to be adapting moving forward. Can you give me a little bit of that experience?
So I had a really wonderful 13 years at the Ohio Arts Council with Dr. Wayne Lawson as our executive director. And Wayne had connections at the time at the Wallace Foundation, and got to talking one day. I talked a lot about what's the public value of the arts? What's the public value of public money that goes to the arts, right? And at the time, the large organizations felt a little entitled to the state money. It was state tax dollars, and the really big organizations felt pretty entitled to the money. The rules of the Arts Council is that the 50 largest organizations got half the money. And I think Wayne was always frustrated by that, about, you kind of got to prove the value that goes with public money. So we had, 6 conversations with the Wallace Foundation, and ultimately they created something like a $21 million initiative to look at just that. What role could state arts councils have in proving the public dollars had public value in the arts? And we were one of, I think it was 12 or 14 states that got $1 million plus grants. We had $1.2 million for our grant to look at that in Ohio. And Ohio has always been one of the strongest state arts councils in the country. And so we were leading the pack. Arizona, Minnesota, I could probably look them up. I still have all those materials 20 years later. I really can't believe it's been 20 years until you and I started chatting that day. It's like, holy cow. And I'm so excited by your new interest / renewed interest in this work. Like, I'm so excited because that work changed everything about the way I worked and everything I've thought about the value of the arts. That it's not just arts for art's sake. That's important. The intrinsic value is important. And there are external value that goes along with that, right? First you move people intrinsically, and then it goes into the community. So, we had some of the best training, best professional development. Wallace would convene us once a quarter all over the country. There were studies. In fact, I put this off my chart earlier today. This it's called the New Framework for Building Arts Participation. This was groundbreaking research by the RAND Corporation, who, if you know anything about RAND, they study everything from climate to oil spills to what. And so it was like the first time that this big research organization had studied the arts, and this was a lot about barriers to the arts. What were the barriers that caused people from participating? And my big aha from this research was, we used to think, so Rand says there are perceptual, experiential, and practical barriers to the arts. So practical are just the simple things to get you, where will I park? How much does it cost? Where's the thing? Can I eat? Those kinds of things. Perceptual is, I don't think the arts are for me. I'm not an arts guy. I'm a sports guy or a girl or whatever, right? And then experiential is I've gone through all those other hurdles. I've bought the ticket, I've driven my car, I've parked, I've come inside, I've seen the play. And experiential is about the experience that you have when you're in the space. And it's either good or bad. And I think we've all had fabulous experiential experiences, and we've had some bad ones, right? And for me, that was a huge aha in my mid-career by that point, because at the time we believed the way to increase arts participation was that women purchased more tickets, higher educated people bought more tickets. You lived in a certain zip code, right? Well, if you follow that logic, the only way to increase arts participation is to find more women, have more educated people, and put more people in certain zip codes, which the logic didn't make any sense, right? This didn't make any sense. And so a lot of work, and we spearheaded it in Ohio, there were a lot of experiments and a lot of work. How do you take those barriers off the equation to create this value in people? I believe when people have amazing experiences in the arts, we just plant little tiny seeds in their hearts and minds, and they're there forever. And so I've asked a question for years about, tell me a personally meaningful arts experience. Not your favorite, not the best, but one that's personally meaningful. And I have yet to meet a person who can't tell me a story. And it might have happened last week or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. And so I just think that's the value. That's why I'm in this work. We do this every day. Every time we don't have a curtain, but every time the curtain rises on an arts experience, I know that that's going to happen for people. And if I stand in the lobby after the show, they're going to tell me the ways it happened, right? So we just began to track and measure that. And we changed our grant making guidelines. We asked different questions. Some of those questions still exist today. They've morphed and changed a little, but they're still there. Getting to the outcomes, getting beyond that. How many butts did you put in seats? So what? What happened to the people? How were they changed in some way when you put their butt in your seat, right? That's for me, that's where we're trying to get to, is the value.
So I found it was interesting reading this, that the date, it was like 2004, that we really, by and large, are still collecting the same data then we've been collecting the same data for the last 2 to 3 decades. And the study showed that we have to go from transactional to transformational. But yet here we sit in 2024 and by and large ask the same questions. What's your audience size? What's your budget size? How many artists do you serve? How is that for you as now executive director of a professional theater when you have to go and fill out those grants year after year?
Yeah, if I'm really honest about it, I find it frustrating because I actually think some of the applications have gotten longer. We were advocating 20 years ago at the Arts Council to get a more streamlined, ask more relevant questions. And Wallace was fabulous because they would ask you, what didn't go the way you thought it would go? And how did you change course to make it right? They didn't want to hear the, wine and roses that everything was fabulous. They wanted the real deal, because how are we learning from the failures? And Wallace, and then later in my career, Doris Duke was another one, were the ones who would say, no, aside from what went really well, what went wrong? And what did you learn from what went wrong? And how did you, to your point, how did you change and morph and adapt to the changes? So we were trying to do that, at least at the Ohio Arts Council, as was Arizona and Minnesota and some of the other participants, right? And now I feel like, because the current resources are scarce, or it feels like they're scarce, so in some cases those applications are even longer. And I have a grant writer. I pay her by the hour. So and then I review every grant before it goes out. So I make sure it's our story and it's on brand. So think about the hours and the time we put into that, writing the grants for those money, which we're grateful for. Well, I'm grateful for every dollar that we can raise that way. And yet it is a lot of work, and some of it feels kind of like busy work. And we're not really getting to the true impact that's being made. Here's what I found. I think I said these to you once before, is looking back on that work 20 years ago, it changed people. It changed the way we worked as professionals. It didn't always change the organization, right? And when the new leader came in, and if they didn't benefit from the same training and the same understanding we all had, muscle memory, it's just muscle memory. It's just easier just to revert to the way we always did it, right? That we know that feels safe and comfy. And the check keeps coming, even though it's smaller, the check keeps coming.
Yeah.
Right. So breaking free of that. And I thought of this earlier and then it slipped my mind, but during the pandemic, we worked with a consultant who said the pandemic provided cover for the change makers. Which I think is really true. We were allowed to begin to make changes that would have taken longer or maybe never happened because the pandemic upended everything. The systems, the thinking, all of it, right? The funding, it just upended everything. And I hope that we can not go back to the old, because the old is gone.
Yeah, I mean, we can't afford to go back to the old. I mean, I'm in the mindset that if we go back to the old, a lot of these organizations won't be around in a decade.
Right.
We see philanthropy changing. Smaller number of donors, they may be donating larger amounts, but the pool is shrinking. We see people who want to support organizations or institutions or causes that they can see tangible or real impact and change. So, I know I'm preaching to the choir about all of the philanthropy dollars. I just talked with somebody yesterday, a nonprofit arts organization, who said, gosh, I had a $20,000 donor who just pulled their funding, and they're only funding human service nonprofits, which gets to the next phase of our work together, which I'm really excited about, is this pilot project that is pending. So in my observation, it's, we keep saying the same story. We keep focusing on economic impact of the arts. So I say, if the story you're telling isn't getting you results, you need to change your story. And I'm convinced that the future for arts nonprofits is you have to be able to show tangible impact in empathy, kindness, creativity, accessibility. So what does something like that mean to you? Again, I know that you're forward looking, but I think that we're going to face some organizations who are going to say, we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. No one's asking us to collect this kind of data, so why bother?
Right. Well, you and I are the same mind in that I think we don't have a choice. Honestly, we have to do it. I'm in a fundraising program currently, and every week they bring in one of the corporate sponsors, and every week I hear them say they don't fund the arts. They don't fund galas. They don't fund the arts. And my board often will say, we need more corporate dollars. Well, now I have some data to prove, look at all the ones we can't go to because they're not going to fund us anyway. So I think we don't have a choice. And everybody is strapped and short-staffed and hard to get people to stay and all the things. But I guess I'd like to believe this is one of the ways we can get people to stay in our organizations to do this work, is to start to show them the true impact we're having on people and on communities. And I'm going to quote Ben Cameron, who used to be the program officer at the Doris Duke Foundation, who used to say, you have to speak to where your audience is listening from. So if I know that a city council member wants to hear about economic impact, I got to be able to tell that story. But if I'm talking to, I don't know, a group of healthcare providers about a show I'm doing around children's mental health, I got to be able to speak to the arts and the value it has in mental health, or the social emotional well-being of children. Or right, I need to be able to collect the data and then tell the story to where my audience is listening from. Right, I've known Sherry Cheney Jones for, we counted up the other day, I think 15 years, and I have always been in her ear about what she's doing in the social sector and how it's relevant in the arts. And she had to start somewhere, right? And over the years, we've done lots of consulting together. When I needed an evaluator, I brought Sherry on a job, and when she needed an arts content expert, she'd bring me along still to this day. And I just think we have to get clear about, in my case, measuring empathy. And a couple of series one and somebody else I knew who's a smart researcher have told me you can measure empathy. That can be measured. I worked with Jazz Arts Group a few years ago, and we measured creativity in children. It's just getting the processes in place so we can collect that data and make that point, right? And so, I mean, I believe if you want a thriving, viable community where people want to live, work, and play, empathy is as important as food and shelter and everything else that goes with it. And I often say, like, I can't build the house for the family, but I can tell the story that illuminates why the house is needed and build the empathy and help them raise the money to build the house, right? It's a whole symbiotic relationship. And we're just not good in the arts at telling those stories, and collecting that data. I used to say we have a corner on the experience market. Nobody creates and makes experiences like we do. And we are terrible at measuring the outcome of that and what it means for communities. We just stink at that part of the equation, right?
Yeah, I've been saying recently, I've got like long-term, short-term, and no-term as far as marketing development and advancement. And if I hear one more time that the arts uplift, and that's why we should,
or enriched, right? Pick any other squishy word you want.
Right. But Christy, I now say no, a bra uplifts. Or we hope it does. The arts are foundational, and we have to be able to draw that distinction. And yes, working with organizations who tell me we have 100% graduation rate from the students that participate in our program. And I say, really? That's fantastic. Show me. Well, we just know it by talking to them. We don't actually have the data where we can produce it. Or I talk to higher ed presidents. I talked to somebody at a liberal arts college who said that students now major in job titles. They don't major in degrees or something that's going to provide them a well-rounded foundation. And then I've heard from tech leaders who say that their employees are lacking team building skills or collaboration skills. I think you said earlier, yes, or it's not one or the other, it has to be both. And until we realize that the arts or creatives are problem solvers and are entrepreneurs at the very core, we're going to continue to have this struggle, not only within the arts sector, but also in every other industry where we're struggling for innovation, productivity, advancement, prosperity, and all of that.
Because it's always been the artists throughout history that have helped solve the problem. I mean, they look at things differently. They figure out creative solutions. In my case, on the stage, in the rehearsal room, the collaboration, communication, team building, that's what we do. The part of making a play, it's all those skills that are considered soft skills. What put the humanity in the works, right?
Yeah. I heard somebody refer to those as actually power skills, which I love that. They don't refer to them as soft skills, but power skills. And another thing that you're reminding me of is other industries are beginning to leverage, or perhaps maybe not beginning to, but do leverage that's not widely known. For example, Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, their nursing school tapped their theater department to teach nursing students workshops in coping mechanisms so we can start to combat the nursing shortage. And there are these stories that are out there over and over, but we just don't talk about it. And so I say it's about the process, not the performance. The performance is the ancillary benefit that we all love and can benefit from, but it's the process that you go through, as you just described in rehearsal. That's where the impact is happening.
Yep, for sure. And, to your point earlier about questions and grant applications, often the questions or the character and word limits we have, which I completely understand, you just don't have the space or the right questions to answer that.
I hope to be back to talk about what we found in doing this pilot project and how we can truly measure tangible social and public value from the arts.
Yeah, Angela, I can't wait. I'm so excited that this work I care so much about. And even I am guilty of getting down, and I'm in the weeds every day, right? This chance to kind of look up and go, right, yes, we need this work. We need it now. And I really believe it can be a model for the country. I'm a big idea girl, just like you. And I just think this has so much potential for the whole sector across the country as a resurgence.
Yep, I do too. The Renaissance of Relevance.
I love it. It's a great title.
Thank you. Thanks, Christy, for your time. I appreciate it. And we will be sure to check in as this pilot project proceeds.
Sounds good.
Thank you.